Just a couple notes for me, and then we'll open it up for whatever topics you may have. One, good morning to everyone. Thank you all for being here. I want to start by thanking the Birmingham City Council for their effort in passing the amended budget this year for the fiscal year 2025 that ends June 30th of 2025. This budget was passed unanimously, and what I want to share publicly with everyone is that the council and I have shared priorities because our priorities reflect what's important to the citizens we equally serve, that being one of neighborhood revitalization, and that is tied for first place with public safety. In this budget, you see an increase for the police department. In this budget, as it relates to neighborhood revitalization, you see another significant amount of money related to paving streets, which in 2 years is almost $30 million. That's a big deal. That's important to the citizens. But you also see other city infrastructure investments, such as our sidewalks, traffic calming, and other things of that nature, as well as wanting to continue to be aggressive with blight removal and how we support our parks and public spaces. So with that said, I want to thank the City Council for supporting this budget. You also go deeper in this budget, you see our continued effort in supporting early childhood, the Birmingham Promise, as well as other initiatives to support public education and birth to 12th grade, that is. So I think it's important that this budget not only reflects our priorities, but it reflects our shared priorities, and the council unanimously approved the budget today. What we look forward to is dispensing and allocating these resources, getting them on the ground as quickly as possible to make those revitalization efforts, as well as beef up resources needed for our police to address and fight crime. With that said, I turn it over to you all for any questions you may have. Who's first? Yes, sir.
What does it mean to get to this moment? I know it's been a lot of hard work between your team, especially considering the challenges y'all faced earlier this year to finally have the passed budget. What does this mean for the city of Birmingham?
Well, it means a lot. There's something I totally forgot, and that is in our employees. This amended budget reflects our commitment to invest in our employees. So this budget includes a 3% cost of living adjustment for all of our employees. It also includes merit pay, 5%. For those employees that are eligible, as well as longevity pay. And that bonus, which is a loose word here, is based on how long an employee has been serving as an employee for the city of Birmingham, which also includes no additional costs to the employee for their pension, or no additional costs for the employee as it relates to that health care pay. Why is that important? Because these same employees have been on the front line when we had this network disruption in March. It's been extremely tough for our employees. Their ability to adapt and adjust, whether it's using pen and paper or anything else of that nature. So to get to this point and have not only our citizens front, mind, and center, but have our employees front, mind, and center, we're extremely grateful for everyone's patience, the public's patience, as well as our employees' patience. Who else?
Is everything back to normal now? Are there any lingering hacking issues?
Everything for the most part is on par. We're still adjustments. There's still a steady cadence of information flow between IMS, the legal department, finance department, to make sure that things are on par. I think a lot of our focus now is related to making sure this doesn't happen again and what we have to put in place. This budget also includes things to enhance and support our systems from not making sure we don't have this type of disruption again.
By December 31st, Birmingham will likely have more homicides than any other year in the city's history. What do you have to say about that? And then what specific laws are you looking for the state legislature to implement to combat gun violence in the city?
Well, what I'll say is if we had one homicide in our city, that would be too many. If we had 2, that would be too many. If we had 10, if we had 100. One homicide is too many because I don't think of it in terms of a number. I think of it in terms of that victim. I think of it in terms of that victim's family. And so It has been an extremely tough year for our city related to gun violence, but it's been harder for those families who lost a loved one. Christmas will be here in a few days. I'm trying to imagine what you do with your family. I'm imagining definitely what I do with my family. Too many families, what they usually do, they'll have a missing family member from that seat at the table, or on that couch when they're watching their Christmas movies together. I think that's extremely tragic. So my mind, my hearts are with them. We've had a laser-like focus, one, on bringing some form of justice to those families by giving our detectives the resources they need to investigate and solve these cases. We haven't been able to solve all of them, and a lot of them are still under active investigation. But I am glad to say, as we close out the year, we have over a 50% clearance rate. That's important, again, not for numbers' sake, but that's important. If you've been a family like ours that's been victim to gun violence, when you get the call from that detective that there's been an arrest, that's some form of relief. So that's important. It's also important to note that the overwhelming majority of residents in our city are caring and peaceful, loving residents. They're fed up like we are, like the police are, with a small percentage of people who are bent on resolving their issues by using guns in public spaces. I would say what we're looking forward to in the future is at all levels. Like you, I recently read in some information that there are some elected officials at the federal level in our state that would like to disband ATF. I would like to remind the general public that the ATF is the only organization that exists in our entire country responsible for investigating, responsible for capturing, responsible for arresting the people who have Glock switches, who have these conversion devices, who manufacture them, who sell them. Unfortunately, they are rampant on our streets. This is not a time to look at that organization and play politics. They're literally the only organization, the only front lines that can help a city like Birmingham go after aggressively and take these type of devices off the streets and hold the people who pull those triggers accountable. So, at a minimum, your question was, what are we looking forward to new laws? Why don't we just hold the line on that, right? Let's just start there. So, I think that's extremely important. In my position, I'm afforded the opportunity where my position is nonpartisan, so I don't care about politics. I don't care about partisanship. But I have a keen priority on wanting to prevent death via gun violence and the use of these conversion devices. That is the focus in 2025. Who's next? Yes, sir.
Would the traffic calming measures perhaps be an expansion of the pilot program in Eastlake? Would that be something separate entirely? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah.
The potential expansion of the program this year?
Absolutely. So I'm going to separate the two. I'm going to start with the pilot program in Eastlake, which not my words, not my opinions, not my thoughts, but as we continue to gather information from residents, feedback in real time, that for the most part residents feel safer, want to come on their porches more and just sit out, that traffic has slowed down, that there's less trash, there's less illegal dumping. In the perimeter, there's less shooting. In the perimeter, there's less prostitution, less drug sales, etc. And so I believe that program is working. What we do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis is gather data on the infrastructure investment piece as well as on the criminal activity piece, whether it's arrests, whether it's citations via traffic tickets, etc., to make sure the program is working. And so January 14th presents an opportunity for a public hearing for residents, whether they are for it or against it, neutral, whatever position any resident who lives within the perimeter wants to take, to come forward, share their thoughts, desires, opinions, again, whether they want to see it continue or not. This hearing is designed for public input as well as the council to determine if they want to move past a pilot and a temporary vacation to a permanent vacation. What I will share with you as well as the public, and but particularly to the residents in this pilot program, if they choose to move forward with it, from feedback they'll give us at a public hearing January 14th, what we'll do is the barriers you currently see won't always exist. We'll have to move into a permanent structure that aesthetically blends in, that is inviting not only to the residents who live there, but for everyone else who peruses the area, if you would, by vehicle, by bike, walking, etc. And so we will have to beautify the current look. It can't remain that way. The biggest thing I'll say about that program is I think it has the potential to work in other areas. Here's what exists in our community. You know this. All of you know this. We have people who have a tendency, unfortunately, it's a handful of them, when they have an issue, when they have a beef, when they have a gripe, whether it's in person, social media, verbally, turns into a physical fight, that they escalate it to some form of gun violence. And they usually do it in the form of get in their vehicle, enter a neighborhood, and discharge a firearm out of their vehicle to a occupied dwelling or an unoccupied dwelling. And one of the ways we can decrease that type of activity is by decreasing the number of entrance and exit points in a historic city like Birmingham that exists at a very high level. And so what we found is this pilot program has the potential to be expanded, but we cannot expand it without community buy-in and or input from residents. So this program is not necessarily driven by us, it's driven by the residents. Your other point, traffic calming. There's a top 3 requests. It falls in that category of please assist us in traffic slowing down. So stop signs, a speed hump, that's a reconfiguration of the street, whatever you will. The priority from the council is funding this more. With the additional funding, all we're funding is projects already in the queue, which we know there are 300 plus that already exist. We won't even be able to get to all of them, but we do feel that we'll be able to make progress on addressing and honoring the requests from residents post our investigations, whether, again, it's reconfiguration of a street, a yield sign, a stop sign, a speed hump, insert whatever you will on that traffic calming. We're excited about honoring this request from our residents. Who's next?
How many retirements from BPD are you expecting at the end of this year, and how many recruits from that graduated training class have been promoted?
Yeah, great question. On the retirements, I don't have the answer. You have to talk to the Birmingham Police Department. What I can tell you is that we're excited about getting on the other end of the curve. Again, Birmingham is not unique in regards to policing shortage. This is a national crisis that existed at large and mid-sized cities since 2020. We saw this intersection of high retirements and low recruiting classes that created a gap in our city and other cities. What we're excited about, and the numbers pan out, is that we just had this November 19th class that started. We have another class, a recruiting class that starts in March. The number we all want to be looking for is how many people show up to these agility tests. We just had an agility test this past Saturday, for example. As I understand it, over a minimum of 40 people attended, and if I'm correct, Rick, you can correct me if I'm wrong, 35 people actually passed the agility test. That is a huge deal, not just in the number of people passing, but just the higher interest when we think back to the number of people that had any interest in showing up for agility tests combined in 2020, 2021, and maybe 2022. 2024 alone, all the agility tests combined have been higher than those 3 years. So what we're seeing is us getting on the other end of the curve, higher interest in people wanting to protect and serve via being police, and particularly here in the city of Birmingham. Anybody else?
Where are we now with confirming a police chief? I know the interim is still there, but where are we with that process?
Yeah, well, I think it hasn't been 30 days, so you give us time, young lady, please. Yeah.
The legislative agenda, do you have any thoughts on that? I think
Yeah,
the council addressed that, but especially personnel board.
again,
service issues.
yeah, so let me say this. The legislative agenda lays out, again, shared priorities between the Birmingham City Council and the mayor's office. What I will say is this. I actually have a great working relationship with Jeff Crenshaw. We actually just talked in person this past Friday. And so this is no knock to the personnel board. I want to be explicit and very clear on that because my working relationship with them is important. And as it currently stands, we have to work together. With that said, as an employer, when I talk to other mayors in the state, they don't have this process. When I talk to other mayors in the county of Jefferson, they express concern. And I want the public, and particularly the media, to help us in how we communicate this issue, because you have to separate what's happening with this. There's a back end of benefits as it relates to the personnel board, and that's employees' rights. When a person actually becomes an employee, they're afforded certain rights that even as a city employee myself for 8 years, I 100% agree with. Don't think any of those things should be taken away. 100% support. There's a front end issue. When we want to hire, who we want to hire, and how much we want to pay them. And making that process more efficient, making that process smoother for the would-be employee. What we tend to find ourselves in is, Greg, I'll use you as an example since you asked the question. You apply to be a Birmingham City employee. It's December 17th. I think you have a realistic expectation to hear back in a reasonable time. But if you don't hear back in a reasonable time, what you do is apply for other things. And then here we come via the personnel board calling you back maybe months later saying, oh, by the way, here are the next steps of the process. Well, by then, Greg, you already got a job. We don't have the luxury we have to find a way to make our process more efficient, to onboard employees in a more efficient way, in a faster way, for the potential employee's sake, as well as the employer's sake. And again, that's not a knock on the personnel board. That's just me speaking as an employer and my desire. I think you get the last question, young man.
Bouncing off earlier questions about crime in the city, do you have a report from the crime commission since it has been 60 days?
Yeah.
What's the timeline that they're given?
We look forward. We're in a window where time is coming to an end as it relates to the year. So I think we've been in a position at the beginning of the year to have that crime report not only received to me or given to me, but we'll all be in a position to hear from General Roper, the general public, as well as the media, to share the results of that report. Here's what I can say. We are in a position to study best practices, find and create more solutions, as well as get more community buy-in on addressing this issue of public safety, and particularly as it relates to gun violence in our city. Please recall that the Surgeon General of the United States of America declared gun violence a public health crisis in America in 2024. And what I tell people is that when America gets a cold, Alabama gets the flu. But when Alabama gets the flu, Birmingham gets pneumonia. And in this conversation of gun violence, we find ourselves looking to bring and pull everyone in, which is what this crime commission is made up of. Community members, faith leaders, those on the continuum of the whole public safety judicial process. That's DA's office and judges. But in addition to that, the corporate community, everybody has to be a stakeholder. Everybody has to have buy-in to address this issue. We won't solve this issue if the onus is only on the police and the mayor's office. And so I'm excited about what this crime commission, what will be in this report, and then how we go about via their recommendations, ideas, and solutions on solving this issue. And one thing very simple: decreasing gun violence in our city. That's the priority. Thank you all so much, and I hope everyone has a good Christmas.